Okay, guys. I hope I'm audible to all. Am I? Let me check once whether I'm audible or not. Yes. So, guys, today after a long break, now we are starting our training on live training on Hibernate, as well as we'll start a spring session also. So now we'll be continuing two frameworks, that is Hibernate and Spring. So for the evening sessions, we'll be starting with the Hibernate, and the morning session we'll start with the spring sessions. Okay. Uh, Let me ask. Fine. So guys, let's work with the Hibernate now. What is the Hibernate actually? So before we want to understand what is a Hibernate, you should understand some terminologies. What terminologies are or how it can work, that we shall see now. So let's understand the basic terminologies of the Hibernate. So already we learned about some of the terminologies in JDBC. What those are: persistence store, persistence data, persistence operation, persistence logic, and persistence technologies. Okay, so what those technologies belongs to and how it affects. Okay, fine. If you observe these terminologies, you will realize the common word in this important terminologies, that is persistence. What is the meaning of persistence? The persistence is the process of saving and managing the data for longer period of time in a database, or maybe in a file, or maybe in some storage media, maybe onto the hard disks, or maybe into some storage device, maybe the SSD. So persistence means, page up for where I was. The meaning of persistence is a saving of your data, that may be in tabular format, that may be in tree structure like a graph databases, that may be NoSQL databases, maybe you're storing your data in Excel format, or maybe anything. So you have to store the data and manage the data for a longer period of time. Okay, so this is one concept, and then we shall see about next terminology. What is a persistent store? Persistent store is the process where the data is stored in the form of object. Also, it is stored in the form of local variables, and those variables allocate the memory in heap. Okay, so persistent store is the process of storing the data in the form of object. What is the meaning of object here? A Java class object. So Java class object, and also local variables allocate the memory in the heap, and that heap memory in the stack of the RAM. Since memory is temporary, and obviously the question may rise, if the memory is temporary, the data will be vanished once the my Java application is closed or the execution is completed. So to save that data permanently, it is needed to write that data in a secondary memory where the device is like a hard disk or SSD. So where the place the data will be saved and managed for a longer period of time is called as persistent store. So here are some of the examples, like example for persistent store, like files. You can use here CSV file, you can use here text file, you can use here tab separated files, comma separated files, text files, maybe an XLS, okay, etc. Here in the case of database software, you can use tables, okay. That tables may be virtual table or physical tables, okay. Database software in the form of tables. So I hope you are clear about what is the meaning of persistent store. So the place where the data will be saved and managed for a longer period of time, location or the place, is called as persistent store. Next we shall see about one more new terminology, that is persistent data. What is the meaning of persistence data? The place where the data will be saved and managed for a longer period of time is called as persistence data. The place where the data will be saved and managed for a long time is called as persistence data. And what are the operations we can do by using persistence terminology? So you can able to perform insert, update, delete, select operations. Those operations are called as persistence operations. Okay. And in other terminology, in other way, these persistence operations are also called as curd, CURD as abbreviation. Some people call as a CRUD, some people call as a SCURD operations. So what this means? C stands for creating a record, or maybe inserting a record into a database table. Read belongs to R belongs to read or select star from so and so table, or select condition based where clause. Then you have to update or modify the records, then delete or remove the records from the database table. So this is for CRUD or SCURD. Similarly, you can create one more. The software industry has created one more terminology, that is SCURD: select, create, update, and delete. Select, create, update, and delete. Okay, this is belongs to persistence operations. So what does it mean, persistence operations? The operations, the place where the data will be saved and managed for longer period of time, along with the persistence operations. Along with the persistence operations. Fine. Next, let's see about persistence logic. What is a persistence logic? What is a persistence logic? The persistent logic, the logic that can be used to perform a persistence operations, is called as persistence logic. So let's see an example. What are the examples? Whenever you are performing or sending your data from one device, one node to another node, so definitely definitely your applications need to interact with the input output streams operations. So examples like IO stream based operations, next JDBC code operations. Okay, so these are the logics that you can able to do, IO streams or JDBC code. Next, what are the persistence technologies or the frameworks to perform a persistence logic? So the technologies or frameworks that are used to develop persistence logic, the technologies or the frameworks that are used to develop a persistent logic are called as persistence technologies or framework. Let's take an example. JDBC. JDBC is not a framework, but it's a technology. Similarly, I can ask the question, what is the Java? Java is neither technology nor framework. Java is a language. Similarly, we have Hibernate. So Hibernate is a framework in Java to achieve a persistence operations, or to perform a persistence operations. Let's take some node point before going to start with the persistence or Hibernate information. So persistent technology or the framework are given to develop a persistence logic to perform persistence operations on the persistent data of a persistent store. Okay, and next we can use files to perform persistent stores in small scale applications because files are lightweight and they are portable. Let's take an example. When I can use the files, you can use the files for developing a desktop based applications, maybe desktop games, maybe mobile games, maybe you're storing some information in XML based files or manifest files. Some nodes, another node point, or you can use node point 1. So let me call here node point 2, and here let me call node point 3. Next, we can use the database software as a persistent store in a medium and large scale applications, in medium and large scale applications, because database softwares are heavyweight softwares. They are heavyweight with respect to the operating system and the machines. So, but it provides security and other features like applying constraints onto the database columns, Okay, maybe that those constraints may be null, not null, unique, primary key. Okay, so such type of constraints. So to avoid the data redundancy in the database tables. Also, it provides SQL supports. Also, database software provides maintaining the data relationship one to one, one to many, or one to or many to one, etc. So in that case, I can use the database software to perform a persistent store operations. So when to use database software as a persistent store operations in the large scale applications. So whenever you are building with the websites, maybe a banking applications, or maybe while developing a enterprise resource planning or ERP based e-commerce applications, where you need to interact with the multiple platforms simultaneously or parallelly, or you need to perform thousands of transactions parallelly. In that case, you can use a database software. So let me have one scenario. Which scenario I can use a Java applications and streaming based applications. So here is my Java application. Here is my Java application. Java application uses IO stream based operations, input and output stream based operations, and where I can utilize it can utilize of flat files. What is the meaning of flat files here? Like text files. Like okay. So this is one example. Next example. So Java application interacts with the database software. So Java, let me add here one more. Java application, it interacts with the database software, and here I'm performing JDBC based code, or maybe object relational mapping based code. Don't worry, just be keep patience. I'll explain what is a OR mapping. OR mapping database based operations. And here I can take the help of database software. So you can use Oracle, you can use MySQL. Let me add here MySQL, etc. Okay, you can add any number of databases like SQL servers or any other. So in this case, my Java application is talking with the database software. So Java application is tier 1, database software is tier 2. So to interact with my Java application, tier 1 to tier 2, so I'm taking the help of JDBC, or I'm taking the help of OR mapping framework. Here, Java application can talk with the database software either by using JDBC or by using object relational mapping framework like a Hibernate. We'll see some of the other frameworks which are available in Java also, but later on. So before we want to understand what are the limitations of JDBC. However, we have already a JDBC in our hand to perform a Java database connectivity operations. Then why shall we learn object relational mapping frameworks like a Hibernate? Okay, so what the need of OR mapping frameworks? Are there any other ORM frameworks apart from Hibernate are available? Yes, the answer is yes. Take example EJB from Sun Microsystem. Now it is under control of Oracle Corporation. IBETIS. IBETIS is also a OR mapping framework from Apache. Toplink from Oracle Corporation. Java Database Object from Adobe. Okay. Then Java Persistence APIs, JPA. It is also called as JPA, Java Persistence APIs from Sun Microsystem. Now it is acquired by the Oracle Corporations. So what are the other computer or other parallel frameworks which are available that are listed out like EJB, IBETIS, Toplink, JDO, and JPA? Okay, that I list out, but later on. So before going on to understand Hibernate, let's understand JDBC. Already we have JDBC in our hand, but why the industry is not using JDBC? Okay, and what are the problems or what are the limitations with the JDBC that we shall see now? The first limitation with the JDBC does not allow the use of objects directly in a persistence operation. Why? Because SQL queries do not allow us to embed the objects as the inputs. Just let's take an example. If I have the let me open my JDBC application so that you will have clear view. This PC, Java web app, full stack training, and I'll go with the JDBC. Let me open any other code if I'm holding with this. Maybe morning session. Yes, let me open CS test. If you control shift W, here you can see I'm trying to perform operations. I'm trying to call a procedures. What I'm trying to do, I'm passing a query string. Okay, I'm passing a query string in the by using the help of parameter, query parameter by using a question mark, question mark, question mark. Okay, so this is one example. So here I'm not directly passing the objects, but I'm passing here the query parameters. This is about the callable statement example. Let me open any one of the example by using prepared statement if I do have. So you can see here. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to pass all the query string parameter by using their variable names, ID, name, DO, date of birth, date of joining, and date of marriage. So this is the issue with respect to my JDBC applications. So Java does not allow to use the objects directly in a persistence operation because SQL queries do not allow to embed the objects as an input in my SQL queries. So it is necessary to convert object data to simple values as a text data to use them in a persistence operation. So this is one of the limitation. Second limitation with respect to the JDBC code, or you can call a persistent logic, JDBC code, or you can call persistence logic, is a database software dependent persistent logic because it uses a database software dependent SQL queries. So just take an example. Uh, in this example, here I'm trying to insert the different date of birth, date of joining, and date of marriage, different date format: DD, MMYY, YYY, MMDD, and triple M, YYY, and DD format. And here I'll use simple date format as a converter, and I'll provide a suitable date format, and the date will be converted. Now just pay attention in this example. Now here I asked the user to enter the date, then I converted the string given date in my desired date format. Okay, I passed the data, and you can see here Control Shift W. I did the same operation for two different databases. Okay, one is for Oracle, one is for MySQL. Okay, so sometime what happens? I need to change the query because queries SQL queries are database dependent queries. SQL queries are database dependent queries. Since JDBC code is not portable across multiple database software, changing the database software in the middle of the project development or in the middle of the project production is very complex. So SQL queries are database dependent. So whenever you want to develop a database independent query, you need to work with the ORM software. Now, in future classes, in upcoming classes, I will let you know how ORM software like a Hibernate directly creates the queries with respect to database and fires the queries. You need not to write the queries. You need to work with the objects and the classes directly. Means when you are working with the JDBC, you need to write a database dependent queries. So JDBC code or persistent logic is a database software dependent persistent logic because it uses database dependent SQL queries, and those SQL queries are totally depend on the SQL database that you are using in the Java project. That may be in the project development or that may be in the project of your production mode. Okay, fine. One more. Next limitation of the JDBC is JDBC code has boilerplate code problem. Means writing some code in multiple application either with the no change or minor changes is not possible. So let's take an example. The JDBC code placed in a multiple applications remains the same except SQL query execution and its results processing. So there is a boilerplate concept in the framework that the framework tells to you, you need not to bother about the what type of SQL queries or multiple operations that you are doing. That everything will be taken care by what? That framework itself. That may be Spring framework or that may be Hibernate framework. So I'll go to the flowchart diagrams. So JDBC code has a boiler code problem. means writing same code in multiple applications, either with the no change or maybe minor changes. So this is the major issue with the JDBC code. So the JDBC code placed in multiple applications remains the same, except for the SQL queries execution and its result processing. So JDBC code throws a checked exceptions. So there are two types of exceptions in the Java. One is checked exceptions and one is unchecked exceptions. So checked exceptions must be handled by the programmer explicitly. Okay, unchecked exceptions you can throw it. So this is basic about exceptions. But by default, JDBC code throws a checked exceptions. So programmer are forced or programmer are informed or maybe tempted to catch and handle. Programmers are forced or tempted to handle to catch and handle the exception, and which leads to suppressing expressions or eating the exceptions in the layer where the JDBC code is written. So let's take an example. Here what I did here I am not here I not catch the exceptions, okay, but here I have thrown the exceptions, okay. Here I have thrown the exception. If you're not interested to throw the exceptions, what you have to do? You have to handle that exception by using try, and here you need to catch the exception. Okay. So what are the different types of exceptions you can handle? Like IO exceptions, IO exception, IOE, or you can handle multiple exceptions parallelly also. So here to handle exceptions, again one more. Okay. Next next class catch block, maybe SQL exceptions. Okay. Again, you need to handle, or you can handle multiple exceptions in this way by keeping the or any other exceptions here, or other exceptions that may be user defined or that may be predefined. Okay. So like this, you have to handle exceptions. So this is forcefully need to be done by the manually in the case of JDBC. Either you throw the exceptions, either you throw the exceptions, or you have to handle the exception by using try and catch. Try and catch. So this is one more headache to the programmer. So JDBC code throws the checked exception. So programmer may force or tempted to catch and handle exceptions. So that leads to the suppressing exceptions or eating the exceptions in the layer where the JDBC code is written. So this kills the possibility of propagating exceptions to other layers. Okay. So this is one more issue with respect to the JDBC. The select SQL queries, the select SQL query execution gives the result set object that is not serializable object to send over the networks. Whenever you want to send the data over the networks, and SQL, if you are using the JDBC SQL queries and with the help of result set, so by default result set are not serializable. So if you want to make explicitly serializable, you need to work with the serializable result set object. Okay. So here result set object means, so let me add here result set object. Okay, fine. So you need to work with the serializable result set object that we already learned here in the JDBC session. So it is next limitation we shall see now. It is not possible to get an object directly in persistence operation, even though data is obtained in the form of an object. It is necessary to convert that object data into simple values to use in a persistence operations. So whenever you want to get a persistent based operations, in the case of JDBC, so it is not possible to get that object directly in the data to the object form. So you need to convert by using a typecasting method. Suppose you are converting a number value into by using if you are converting a simple normal variable for maybe age, maybe a employee ID, and you are trying to convert that number into integer variable number into a integer object. What you need to do? You have to parse the data integer dot parse int of, and you need to pass the variable. Then you will get the integer object. And next limitation is there is no direct support for services like caching, transaction management. Okay, by using a JDBC. So to overcome these above limitations, we have to use a OR mapping. We have to use OR mapping or to develop a persistent logic. So due to the above limitation, JDBC cannot be used to develop a persistence in all kinds of situations. So these are the limitations. These are the limitations of a JDBC. Okay, fine. Next, we shall see about OR mapping. What is a OR mapping? Actually, the term here OR, not OR, it's a OR. That is object and relational. What is a OR? Actually, the OR meaning is that object relational mapping. Object relational mapping is the process of mapping or pairing or matching Java class, Java classes to database table. So one side keep your Java class, public Java class, and one side keep your table. Okay, and Java class members. Obviously, Java class has the data members, so those are called as Java class member variables. And here I'm mapping other side as a columns. So take example, I'm using a Java class as an employee, public class employee. Here is the Java class name as employee and database table name as a EMP tab, employee tab. So I'm mapping employee with the employee tab as a table name. So this is one mapping. Second mapping, what I'm trying to do, I'm mapping the Java class member variables with the columns. So employee has employee ID, integer employee ID. Here, uh, EID has an integer column name. The next string in employee name. Here employee name as a varchar as a column name. Float salary as a class variable, member variable. In the database table, I'm using salary varchar 2 of 10. Okay, so in this I can able to map. So what is the meaning of OR mapping? OR mapping is the process of mapping Java classes to the database table, Java class member variables to the database columns, and creating a Java class object that employee E as a employee is assignment operator new employee of 101 Yogesh and 12345.50 is the salary. So I'm mapping that Java class object that represent a table record with the synchronization between them. This whole process is called as OR mapping, or it is also called as object relational mapping. Don't worry, I will draw a diagram so that where you will have clear idea. And here, what is the meaning of synchronization? Okay, now here up to here we learned. Up to here we learned. Next, what is the meaning of OR synchronization in OR mapping? So the meaning of synchronization is the synchronization between an object and database table row means modification made in my Java class object will be automatically reflected to my database table row, and it's vice versa. And it's vice versa means if I make a changes in the database table row will be reflected to my Java class objects. So let's have an example. Hmm, let me create here class employee. Okay. Hmm, let me add here private int of employee number. Next, let me add private string ename. Next, next we'll have some setters and getter methods. Okay. Mm, some of the that I will go later on, not now. Then setters and getters methods. Okay. So what I'm trying to do, actually, let me bring this to the Java table, and other side is my Java class. Okay, this is my Java class, and other side, let me create my Java database OR mapping data. OR mapping configurations. Okay, configurations in my XML file. in my XML file. Here I will do. So what I'm trying to do here, I'll map now. So I have a student class. Okay. So next, after generating this student class, so I'll use here. So not student. So here my table name is employee. Column name is employee, and this is my employee class. Employee class. I will map with my EMP tab. EMP underscore tab in my database table. That may be Oracle database table, or that may be a MySQL database, or you can take any database. Database, this is my database table. Okay. So here what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to map my employee class object, employee class object with the employee table. So look at the meaning, just compare. So what is the meaning of here OR mapping? Mapping is the process of mapping Java classes to the database table. So here I do have table in my database. So let me create a table. Actually, let me go with the OR mapping, how mapping happens, Control X. So you will have idea. So employee underscore tab, and it is a database table, and this has maybe employee ID, employee ID uh, integer, integer of integer, or you can use number of maybe I'm using 5 digits. Okay, so this is one column. Next I have employee name, varchar, or you can use varchar2 of maybe I'm using 20. Okay, and some other columns. So these are acting as a columns here in my database table. In my database table. So how they will map, how they will perform mapping. So here, if you observe here, I have employee class. Okay, here I have mapped with the employee table, my database table. Next, I want to map these my data members. What are the data members? Employee name, employee number with my employee ID and employee name. Okay, so let me map here. How do I map here? So let me use here data members of my class, and one side column name. Okay, column names. So how do I map now here? So here one side I have employee number, and other side we have EID, employee ID. Okay, as a column name. Next here I'm mapping employee name. Here I'm mapping employee name. You can use same name, no matter. Column name and variable name should be same. Even you can use different name. If you use different name, you need to explicitly configure into a Hibernate mapping file. Okay. So in this way, you can able to map. So I hope you are clear about this, how mapping happens. So object relational mapping means you are mapping your Java class name with the database table, and you are mapping Java class member variables with the database columns. Okay. So employee class, here I am mapped with the database table as an employee table, and database data members of a data member variables, data member variables. So let me add here so that you will have a clear idea. So here I have mapped the data member variables with the column names of a database table, employee number with the employee ID, and employee name with the employee name. So in this way you can able to map. So this process is called as OR mapping. I hope everyone is clear. If everyone is clear, please put it in chat box. Yes, sir, we are clear. Okay, fine. So, this is about OR mapping. Everyone is clear, guys? If you are clear, please put in chat box. Yes, sir, we are clear. So we can, so that I can proceed with the next point. Next, I will try to plot this whole explanation with the diagram also. But Beam, stick to the class, stick to time. What are the ORM softwares? What are the different ORM softwares are available? I'll list out later. The ORM softwares like Hibernate, already I'm talking about Ibetis, JPA, EJBs, then Toplink, JDOs, okay, are required to develop the OR mapping persistence logic. So let me draw a diagram so that you will have clear idea. Actually, I forgot to bring my mouse. So do I have mouse, extra mouse? Okay, fine. Let me open the paint and let me draw a diagram. Mm, 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 Fine. So one side, let me draw a diagram. Java app, and under this Java app, let me add my Java application. So this is my Java application. Okay, and this Java application is responsible to perform OR mapping, responsible to perform object relational mapping. Okay, so Control A. I don't want underline. I don't want bold. Okay, make normal. Fine. So OR mapping. So this is Java app which contains a OR mapping logic, or you can also call a persistence logic. Okay. So this is my persistent logic, and in this persistent logic, what I told you earlier, we need to map a Java class with the database table, and I need to perform a synchronization. So how synchronization happens, that we shall see now. Uh, Last time I took the example for what? Which class? Employee. Okay, employee. So I need to create employee class object. So let me create employee class object here. Maybe I'm passing the data. So employee assignment operator, new employee of 70, Ganesha. Then okay, I took how many members? Data members. I have two data members. Okay, more than enough. Fine. So I have E is one object. I have E is one object. Okay. Similarly, I can have one more object. Let me add here employee. This is my employee E. Okay. Okay, fine. So has this E has the data in the form of what? 70 and Ganesha. It has 70 as a value and Ganesha is another value in my stack memory. Okay, this is pointing to this database, this data memory. Okay, fine. Now I want to insert this data into my database table by using OR mapping operations. So I have one more table parallelly along with me. Take example, this is my database table. Okay, and escape. So this is my database table with the name called, mm, here I have employee tab, employee underscore tab. Okay, under this employee tab, we have a column name called EID, employee ID. Okay, and I have, what are the column names we chose earlier? Let me check once again. EID itself. Okay, and I have one more column, E name. So these are the two columns I do have in my database table. So whenever Java applications trying to insert the record in the form of Java class object or the network in between, in between. Okay, and we have this record here. Okay, in my database table. So let me add again here same names. What are the names? 70, and employee name is Ganesha. Okay, so your Java application trying to insert data in the form of Java class object with the help of OR mapping software, and need to perform a persistence logic operations like creating a new record with the help of synchronization by using ORM software. In the middle, you are using for ORM software. This is the ORM software you are using here, and we need to perform a synchronizations. We need to perform a synchronizations. Means what? Here, employee E contains data in the form of object 70 and Ganesha. 70 and Ganesha. Okay. So employee ID is 70. Let me add here for your understanding. What is this here? E EID. EID. Okay. And here E name. E name. Fine. Employee ID 70. Employee name Ganesha. So now you are trying to insert with the help of ORM software, and you are applying synchronization over your network round trip. Synchronization. Synchronizations. And you are using here ORM software. ORM software that may be Hibernate, that may be HAB, that may be Hibernate, that may be JDO, or any other database or any other ORM object relation mapping software. So what it needs to mean of ORM softwares. Meanwhile, this employee ID, I'm trying to insert an employee ID with the employee ID 70 and with the name of Ganesha. The record has been inserted. Record has been inserted into my database software. And this is my database software. Database software, maybe Oracle, or you can take any. You can take Oracle or maybe MySQL or PostgreSQL or any other. Okay. So it is inserted. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, some other client or some other user try to change the name of this employee ID. Instead of Ganesha, they try to make a Shankara. They try to make a Shankara. So in that case, synchronization should be reflected to my Java application also. Okay, how it happens? What is the meaning of synchronizations? The changes made either in Java application, Java class object, or changes made in the database software, it should be reflected in both the sides. In both the sides. Okay, database table. So take example. Now, employee ID, employee E object is trying to perform a database insertion operation into my database. Okay. So in the same way, data is inserted, and some other way the Ganesha name is removed. Okay, Ganesha name is removed or maybe deleted, or maybe the record is updated with the employee ID, and it has set the new name. It has set the new name. What the name they have set? They have changed the name from Ganesha to maybe Shankara. Okay, parallelly this reflection should be reflected to here also parallelly. So instead of Ganesha, okay, the object value with the name called instead of Ganesha, you should change Shankara. I hope you are clear. What is the meaning of synchronizations? Either you make changes in the database software, the changes made in the database software table column should be reflected to the Java class object, or vice versa. If you make a changes in a Java class object data member variable, the same changes should be reflected to the database software column value. Okay, I hope you are clear here. So this is called as synchronizations. Let me have one more object with the name called E1. Okay, this is one more object. So here I'm using E1 or E2. Okay, E2 has employee ID. Maybe I can call 100 and employee name. employee name with maybe I can call here Raja. Fine, fine. Parallelly, we need to have the same record 10100 my database table and employee name Raja. Okay. Now some other application try to make the changes into my database table and try to remove this Raja with the maybe or any other name like what Mahesha. Okay, Mahesha. The same Mahesha for this record should be reflected to here in my Java class object. So this is called as what? Synchronization. This is called as what? Synchronization. I hope you are clear, guys, for this record. Okay, and this should be bidirectional. This is called as what? Synchronization. Means if you make the changes in Java class object, that should be automatically reflected to the database table. And if you make the changes in the database table, that should reflect to your Java class object itself. And this must be in the network. So where is my Java full stack training? Figure 1. OR mapping with Java class object to database table record. Control C, save. Fine. So let me add here figure name so that you can get the idea what is the meaning of this figure. Hmm. Okay, fine. So let me add your figure label. So better to refer this record. I hope you are clear about guys how OR mapping works with the help of synchronization. So what is the meaning of synchronization? Either you make changes in the Java class object or you make changes in the database table column with the tuple values. So both should be reflected in the other sides. Java class object changes will be reflected to the database table column values, and database table column value changes made changes will be reflected to the Java class objects. Okay. So let's see in OR mapping. So so this is the example that we added here. Maybe you can take student class or maybe Java class. Okay. So guys, this is the example you can call Java classes are mapped to a database table. For example, student class might be mapped with the student tab database table. So member variable of the Java class are mapped to the columns in the database table. For example, student number in the student class is mapped to the STNO in the student tab table, and student name is mapped with the student name column in the database table. Okay. So objects of a Java class represents rows in the database table. Okay, objects of a Java class. So if you look at the example here, so here, so here is my Java class object. This one class object act as a one row in my database table for E. For E2, it act as a second row in my database table. So this is example. So actually, this is the explanation of whole thing that I explained here. So in OR mapping, Java classes are mapped with the database table like employee tab, student as a Java class with the student tab in database table. Member variable of the Java class are mapped with the columns in the database table like employee number, employee name, student name. Same can be mapped with the database table column names like employee number with employee ID, here e name, employee name. Similarly for the student name, the student ID, student name. So in this way you can able to map. So objects of a Java class represents rows in the database table. So for instance, object in our case, for instance, let me have the copy of the same and I can use here my employee. So let me use here employee here and for employee here instead of this one. So with respect to this statement, employee E, new employee of 70. So for instance, object E of the employee class. So object E of the employee class with the with employee ID that is 70. Here I passed here employee number or employee ID. What is the column? What is the mm, ENO? I will choose employee number. So employee number and here as a E name. So here I pass the value as what? I pass the value as Ganesha. Okay, represents a row in a table. A row in a table. So what is employee table? Employee table with a ENO with a 70 with 70 and as a employee name as a Ganesha. Okay, with respect to this diagram. With respect to this diagram. So here employee ID 70, employee ID 70 and employee name Ganesha with the Shankar. Actually, we made a synchronization between Java class with the database table. So that's what Ganesha I made. And once you change, it will change to the Shankara to the Ganesha. Okay, fine. Similarly, you can perform same like in the case of student also. If you have student class, so make it a student. So here is my student, ST, maybe ST1, student 1, assignment operator new, student of, so here what I added here, 101, and here Raja, king. Okay, fine. So for instance, let's have one more instance. An object st1 of the student class with student number and s name Raja King represents a row in the student tab table because stno act as a row number and st name act as a student name. Okay, fine. So let me go with the. So while working with the, so this is about the overall explanations and the description about this figure. So while working or developing with, let me add this informations. So while working or developing with OR mapping persistent logic, we write all the logics in the form of objects. That is, we can perform all the persistence operations directly to the objects without any SQL queries supports. So due to this, OR mapping persistent logics become database software independent persistent logic. Okay. Where is my cursor? So when working with the OR mapping persistent logics, all logic written in terms of objects. So you need to write objects only and allowing persistent logic to be performed directly through the objects without needing of writing the SQL queries. So in OR mapping configurations, so this makes persistent logic database software independence. Okay. So this makes persistent logic database software independent. So OR mapping, what is the meaning of OR mapping configurations? OR mapping configuration involves using either XML files. Actually, we call as a Hibernate configuration file. So let me add here the name Hibernate configuration file, Hibernate mappings.xml file. Okay, Hibernate mapping.xml. So OR mapping configuration involves either using XML files like a Hibernate mapping.xmls, or even with respect this is with respect to Hibernate 3 and 4. If you are using Hibernate 3 and 4, you need to write a Hibernate mapping file where you can able to map uh, Hibernate Pojo class along with the data members, uh, private data members, and public getters and setter methods. And you have to configure Pojo class with respect to a database table. Okay. Or if you are using Hibernate 4 plus versions, you can perform annotations. So annotations by using a at the rate. So at the rate entity, at the rate table, at the rate ID. So there are some annotations that we shall see later on. So you can use the annotations to specify which Java class should be mapped with the which database table, which database tables. So how we can do that we shall see later on. So in older versions of Hibernate, we need to write Hibernate mapping file. Even Hibernate 6 and 6 plus versions also supports mapping file based configuration of a Java class with respect to a database tables. Otherwise, if you're not happy to use a mapping file, you can perform annotation based operations to map Java class with respect to a database table as well as columns. OR mapping, so ORM softwares or OR mapping softwares. Actually, I'm calling as a OR. We can call as a OR mapping softwares takes the objects as a input and returns the object as an output. Okay. So OR mapping takes employee as an object and returns the object as a outputs. So that may be a single row operation or that may be a multi-row operations. Okay. Single row operations means what? One record inserted. You are getting a one as a value, as an integer. So this eliminating, or maybe you are retrieving a bunch of records from your database table by with the help of synchronizations and with the help of OR mapping software to your Java applications. So in that case, it eliminates the needs of object notations, data to simple values, and it's a vice versa. So OR mapping in the ORM softwares takes the objects as a inputs. OR mapping, OR mapping in the ORM software takes the objects as the inputs and also it returns the object as the outputs. So this eliminates the need to convert the object notation data values to simple values and vice versa. So next we shall see about some of the list of other ORM softwares. List of ORM software or object relational mapping softwares. So I'm talking about only Java based. I'm not talking about .NET or maybe or any other database or any other language, technology or language based software. So I'm talking about here only Java based list of ORM softwares. Let me scroll up so that you can have clear view. I hope up to here clear. So first is EJB. What is EJB stands for? Enterprise Java Bean. So it is given by it is from Sun Microsystem. EJB software is given by Sun Microsystem. Sun Microsystem. Okay. Now it is under control of Oracle Corporation. Okay. Oracle Corporation. So this is one ORM software. Next is Hibernate. So Hibernate is from Softtree. Softtree. Okay. And they are from Red Hat. Next up, Abat is Abat is from Apache software. Apache. Next up, Toplink. Toplink from Oracle Corporation. Next up, JDO, Java Database Object. It is from Adobe. Look at the magic to make Java as a open source platform. Once you make open source platform, so anyone can develop different kinds of softwares and applications and the frameworks and technology, and it provides the freedom to the developer whom to use, which one to use, what to use, and which one to become popular based on the performance and based on the utilization. So next ORM software is JPA, Java Persistence APIs. JPA. It is from, it is also from Sun Microsystem. Mm, so Oracle Corporation. Okay, fine. No, I don't want to save in JDBC. I want to save here in Hibernate. Uh, introduction. Introduction of Hibernate. Chalo guys, let's look at the next point. What ORM software is after getting to know a list of different ORM softwares which are Java based. Okay. Hello. Okay. Nagpuram मध्ये. ते आणखी नंबर आहे ना पासवर्ड. हो मी क्लासमध्ये आहे. हो. केली रेसिडेन्सी सगळी. केली रेसिडेन्सी नागपुरामध्ये. केली रेसिडेन्सी. ठीक. So guys, next let me add one more point. Every ORM software, every ORM software. So for your kind information, every ORM software it internally uses JDBC code. Actually, you need not write JDBC code, but every ORM software it internally uses a JDBC code or it creates internally JDBC code. So every ORM software internally uses JDBC code and SQL queries to complete the persistence operations, but it hides that process. It hides that process from the programmer. From the programmers means programmer need not to bother about what type of SQL queries to be written. What type of SQL queries has to be write in my Java applications. So just create the Java class object, create the configuration, create the mapping, and fire the and call that Java class object. So ORM software internally creates database code, JDBC code to connect with database software. It internally creates SQL queries, that is software database independent queries, and it fires that queries. It fires that queries to perform a persistence operations that may be create, insert, update, or delete. Okay, and hides that process from the programmer. So programmer need not to bother about what is happening internally. So so hence hence programmer thinks that that he or she he or she is doing object based object-based persistence logic development. This indicates that every ORM software provides abstraction layer on JDBC. I hope you are clear now. So let me add one more points. Object relational mapping, OR mapping software also converts converts given objects given object data into simple values as required for for persistence operations and simple values into object as required for application Java application. So let me add one more question for your next term. What is the question? So where we can use where we can use JDBC, and where we can use object relational mapping like Hibernate to develop the persistence logic. So what are the different scenarios where we can use where we should use Hibernate as a ORM mapping operations in my Java applications, or in which scenario I should use JDBC, in which scenario I should integrate my JDBC code into my Java applications. What are the different scenarios? The scenarios are simple. Okay. Okay, guys, this is more than enough for today's first sessions. Next session we shall see about the remaining questions. Okay, fine.